Hola. There goes my Spanish. I'm very honored to be here today, to be attending this conference, and before I get started, I would like to extend my greatest thank yous to the Direction General who organized the conference and all the committee organizers who have been so helpful. And I especially would like to thank Julieta. Julieta has been my contact through email for several months now, and she's been working hard for me to help support me. And even late last night when I made changes to my slides, and these are my new ones up here now today. So I want to thank you, Julieta. Are you in right here? Yeah, there we go. Okay, well. Well, so let's get started. How do we push the buttons? This one? I'm just going to start by saying Happy Open Access Week to everyone here today. And by also telling you that I believe very strongly in open access, but I want to change my presentation a little bit to be more about openness in general. Academic openness is much more than open access today. And despite the fact that the panel has articulated that this is about open access to content and organization, I wish to broaden my presentation to be more about academic openness, and that includes things like open science and open data, which we've heard about today, but also open education and even open code, which we also heard mention of today. In all of my studies and conversations that I have as an academic librarian, I have yet to find someone who doesn't agree with the idea of open access as the principle for research. We all kind of know that sharing research is a good thing. While we know it intuitively, there have been many, many studies that have shown that openness in general benefits science. It benefits the researcher itself in many ways. It enhances their visibility. It provides greater recognition to their work, greater discoverability. They have shown very much that if you are in an open access environment, you will be cited more, and more people will be using your work and building and standing on your work. We also know that openness will benefit the research community in general because it advances research further. It improves research into the future. It reduces unneeded duplication and improves long-term accessibility and preservation to things if we have things in open access environments. So there's little doubt that academic openness is good for science. But academic openness is also really good for society. And the sustainable goals that we have been talking about at this conference are the reason why we're here today, and this panel to talk about why open access fits into the Sustainable Development Goals. Access to research will help develop the capacity to effectively use information and preserve information to ensure an ongoing access for the future. But openness to research discoverabilities will provide a trusted network to local institutions. But it has the capacity of leading the advancement of all of these agendas that are up here, and not just the ones that we talk about, the quality education, for instance, which is definitely a part of what libraries do. Ultimately, the principles are simple. If research can move in an open environment, move freely from one researcher to another, between disciplines and around the globe, we will accelerate research and heighten the quality of the research results. If libraries want to contribute to all 19 of the SDGs, then our work to support and push the research that is conducted at our institutions out into an open environment becomes very imperative. I'm just going to show you a slide that borrowed from a colleague of mine, Vincent, who is a colleague at the Université de Montreal. This is the world map that shows how openness, open access really benefits everyone. This map is colored to show who is using subscription journals and who is citing subscription-based journals and who is citing open access journals. And you can see that in the developed countries, we are using a lot of subscription-based, we're citing a lot of subscription-based tools. But as we move into other areas of the world, they are only citing open access research. So we can ask why. And there may be many different answers, and I don't think I can get into the conversation today about why some parts of the world are only citing open access journals, but I think it could be each of us that thinks about that. But one answer may be that it's all they have access to. And so if they want to contribute to the global challenges today, if they want to have access to research, the only thing they have is open access environment. We talked a lot about this at this conference about some problems that we have seen in academic research. And the problem is that open access is mired with many, many different roadblocks. One of them is about fake news. And we've heard about it here in Mexico, but it's also a big problem up in Canada. If science is to be trusted, we need to make sure that we have access to the true and honest news and true and honest research. So the big problems can be that we have fake news. Another problem is that we have a lot of predatory journals. Predatory journals affect our trust in science. When we are not sure if we can trust an open journal because it may be predatory, it may be very poor quality research in there, and how do we know that we're actually using quality research? And another problem is that even within good quality journals, there are a lot of low quality studies that enter in there, and we're seeing an increasing number of retractions happening. If any of you follow retractionwatch.com, it is an excellent website, but you will learn that there are about 500 retractions in reputable journals every year. And those 500 retractions have been heavily cited, probably journal articles. So even trusted research in quality journals is not necessarily trustable. In Canada, our journals are growing exponentially. So we are adding more and more journals that are Canadian to the world of open access journals, or journals in general actually. This is another slide from Mesa showing that in Canada we are producing our own content now. We are pushing our own content out for our own journals. But we're also finding that we're not sure who is controlling that message as it goes out. Many scientific societies, universities are pushing our journals out, but we also think that many of the Canadian journals are being generated and created by predatory publishers. So this chart, which may be difficult to see, shows that many, many new journals are being created, but a lot of them might be coming from predatory journals. I suspect that this may be true elsewhere. We fear, many Canadian researchers fear too, that the system, because in Canada our researchers want to publish in high quality journals that may not necessarily have the highest impact yet, we're being controlled a little bit, our research agendas are being controlled a little bit by the international mega publishers. So they have the capacity to change science policies and drive research funding where they want it to go. So research topics that get published in the high quality journals are being controlled by agendas both in the north but also in the west. So I would say maybe in the US and in Europe. And if our researchers in Canada want to publish in the big journals, then they're going to have to choose to study topics that are of interest to those big journals. So the choices that our researchers and our abilities to publish and get funded are being affected, and our agendas are not necessarily matching the passion of the powerful United States. I suspect that this may be true for countries like Mexico as well. So we look at all the new journals that are happening in Canada. and you may have heard of BL. He used to have a list of predatory journals that many of us watched, whether it was questionable or not. From that list that I showed you a minute ago, we can see that only 2 did not enter onto BL's list of predatory journals. So we have a big problem with our Canadian scientific publications and publishers that are not necessarily being trusted. Many people found Beals as suspect, and of course he had his own agenda. So many of these journals may actually have been good quality journals, but the fact that they entered onto a list of not trustworthy will affect where our scientists choose to publish. And McGill is a very, where I work at McGill University in Montreal, is a very premier research-intensive university in Canada. We have many faculty studying many different issues and agendas. Well, we have maybe 1,684 tenured stream faculty members and many Canada research chairs, many active Royal Society of Canada researchers and graduate students. They seem to be maybe very much in control of where they may want to choose and where they may want to choose their agenda, and whether or not, where they tell us they may believe very much in open access as a concept, they still choose to publish in the very closed down, necessarily high quality or reputable journals. So they tell us that they support open access, but for them sharing is not easy. It's very complex for them to choose where they want to publish. One, they're not certain if the journals that they publish in are of that reputable status, but they have their own habits and disciplinary cultures that are affecting where they choose. They have their own misunderstandings of those traditions. They have fears of being scooped, data trolls if we're talking about open data. The tools that we use to help them put their work into open access environments are often very clumsy and not easy to navigate. Our institutional repository, for instance, makes it hard for our researchers to deposit their work easily once they've published into an open access green environment. And the gold environment, which costs money, isn't always available to them. In Canada, we don't have great policies or incentives just yet, so they don't necessarily feel there's much reason to bother. What's in it for them? Our tenure process does not necessarily support or value open access in general, and other institutional policies are not up to date or aligned necessarily with the objectives of open access. And we just heard about it at the last session. Our research ethics and consent forms are not helping our research go open access if they're writing into them that they will destroy their data within 5 years of completion of a project, or if their consent forms tell the research populations that none of their data will be shared with others and it will be only held in a closed environment for the principal investigators. So we need to be re-examining and looking at all of our policies, our campus policies, to help our researchers put their work out. And of course, we just talked about the legal concerns about privacy and security that our researchers are very terribly worried about. So how are we supporting openness at the McGill Library? We really want to help advance all of the SDGs, and our way to maybe help advance all of them is to help our researchers get their research out there for others to find and cite and use. But I first want to just talk quickly about the library as its collection and budgets, because we, as a library, are putting a huge, enormous amount of our funds into purchasing things that are closed and not necessarily available to others. In libraries, we don't want to cut our budgets. We don't necessarily want to move our budgets into paying for open access things. In fact, at McGill, we have made a very strong statement that we will not have an article processing charge. There is no author fund ever to come for McGill. We are not going to support our researchers that way. We don't believe that that will necessarily help shift the model or change open access shift open access publishing scholarly traditions. So we're faced with a problem. What are we going to support? Because our McGill Library is really committed to supporting open access, but we are not going to help them with the article processing charge, we've actually created an open access funding goal. We do want to divert some of our collection fund to support open access. We want to support things that are actually going to change the model as it moves forward. We recognize and explore open access initiatives that have the potential to demonstrate a new economic model for open access scholarly publishing and become a sustainable part of the scholarly publishing landscape. So McGill Library will use our collection fund to support initiatives that have a long-term impact for economic and scholarship publishing rather than the short-term solutions such as article processing charges. There are other ways that we are supporting our open access push for our researchers. One thing we are doing is working with our librarians and training them and upskilling them in many ways as possible to support the researchers with this transition. We are training our librarians to become research data managers, research data management supporters to our researchers. We are creating template emails to help them talk and have the conversations with their researchers about why and how they should put their work into a green environment, into an open access repository. And we are helping our researchers choose the best journals that they can find. So we have been working systematically through departments and creating the top lists of their published journals of their choice, and then putting them through a lens of how open that journal is, whether or not it will comply to any broader funder policies. We're also upskilling them in other ways. We're advocating to our faculty. We have a big push out to advocate to our faculty and help them publish their work in open access. We actually have a full service at McGill, so all the researcher needs to do is send us their CV or send us their citations, and we will go through and check whether or not that work can be put immediately into a repository or put into an embargo environment. We will even offer to negotiate or support them in negotiating their contracts so that they could put their work into open access. Another thing we're doing is working with our campus community, our communications staff. So our campus community communications staff actually do a lot of push and telling the world about what McGill researchers are doing. We've worked with them so that they now add any of the work that they can into an open access environment. They will deposit it into our repository, but if they're not able to do that, we still work with them, make sure they're citing things properly, and if they can get a DOI, we want to make sure that they have their digital object identifier and citation into every single news piece that is about new research at McGill. We're working with our Office of Research to help embed various open access kind of conversations into the works that they do so that they can really be aware and help the researchers make their work open access. So not only do they monitor all of the funded research, but they're soon to be asked in Canada to monitor whether or not things have research data management plans attached to them and whether or not already the researchers are focused on making their work open access and complying to the repositories. We've also been joining various initiatives, and we will soon be, through our ORCID Canada initiative, we're soon going to be making sure that the researchers at McGill have their ORCID IDs, and that is one step to help support and move their environments into open access. Certainly a role for a librarian, many people wonder if we are at the tipping point. We continue to promote and educate our campus. The strategy focuses really on 4 key areas. We are continuing to develop and enhance expertise of open access and openness services and resources for campus researchers. So we're pushing out a lot of training and getting out into departments and into the classroom to teach people about what open access is. We are developing open access and open data literacy training program targeted to our early career researchers, and we have ongoing capacity training for our liaison librarians. The open data and research data management has become the big push for this year, but I think it's going to be going into open science and other areas very soon. And we're focusing on developing and deepening our stakeholder relationships, both internally but also in our communities. So in McGill, it is in Montreal, which is in Quebec. It's a French language province where we have many other French universities, and we're all trying to work together so that we can develop tools for our province, but also for the country. I've got 3 images or 4 images up above, and these are my questions is whether or not we're at the tipping point. We have some great successes at McGill that I want to tell you about. The library recently digitized 100%, well, maybe we'll say 99.9% of our historical thesis collection. So anyone in the world can now go and find a thesis that was written by someone at McGill University. We're very proud of the fact that we did that. We had a systematic approach to make sure that we didn't miss any of our early theses. The Montreal Neurological Institute, which is one of the McGill institutes in Canada, became one of the first open science institute in the world. Not only do any of their researchers have to publish in open access, but they have to make all their data open. They are not allowed to patent, no patents at all if you are a researcher at the M&I. Their goal is to actually save and answer the world's global neurological health problems. And I believe that by having an open access mandate within their institute, they're probably more likely to do that. So they really are trying to be very forward-thinking that way, and maybe soon we will not have Alzheimer's or dementia or other neurological institutes in diseases because of the work that they're doing. Outside of the library, we're really supporting those that are also talking about open access. And last year, a group of students came to me saying that they wanted to start an open science group, and we have just been sort of out there on the sidelines, not wanting to get in the way, but allowing and supporting that. And they have an open science meetup group, and they've had their own events, and they are supported by the library whenever we can. We certainly want them to feel that we are there for them if they need us for anything. And we have faculty that are talking about open science, some quite critically, and then we make sure that we're there in the audience when they talk about areas of open science or what their concerns about open access. But I think really our struggles are still there. So while we're moving forward, and many people say we are at the tipping point, I think as a practitioner, as a librarian, I can tell you that sometimes, sometimes it feels like we're more like this, in the mud, and pushing and slugging and moving very slowly forward. We need to do a lot of things if we want to help move our research agendas into the open access world. We need more incentives. I know the argument about the article processing charge is one that certainly McGill has put to rest, but I believe many others are also rethinking the article processing charge. But how else can we remove barriers? How else can we help our researchers get into good habits like acting on acceptance? How can we get them to all have their ORCID IDs and be responsible for managing and curating their own research into open environments? How can we mainstream the workflows so that it's easier? Because it's very, very difficult right now. It takes a lot of staff time to verify policies? How can we promote our policies and keep beating the drum? We certainly need to demonstrate impact, and one of the areas that I'm really keen to do and I've always been focusing on is finding stories to tell, finding examples of how science is actually changing societal and economic expectations and solving world problems. If we can get more stories, I think then we will start to see greater momentum. And of course, we need more champions, more ambassadors. The M&I at McGill and our Open Science Group are really great examples, but I'd like to see more. And I think on that 0 minutes left, I will conclude this. Thank you very much.